Standing in the bitter cold on Christmas Eve, I stared at my son Jason's front door as it slammed in my face. 68 years old, and my own child had thrown me out like garbage. All because I refused to hand over the bakery business I built from nothing while raising him alone. As snowflakes settled on my shoulders, I fumbled for my car keys, tears freezing on my cheeks. This betrayal cut deeper than any winter chill, but tomorrow would bring a different kind of gift for my ungrateful son. I never imagined my own flesh and blood could hurt me so deeply. As I drove away from Jason's house that Christmas Eve, my mind wandered back to where it all began 35 years ago. Sweet Comfort Bakery started as nothing more than a desperate attempt to keep a roof over our heads after my husband Tom abandoned us without warning. I was 33 then, with an 8-year-old son who still asked when Daddy was coming home. The answer never changed because Tom never did come back. No calls, no letters. Just the memory of a suitcase being packed and a front door closing for the last time. Our joint bank account emptied the same day. Those first months were a blur of fear and determination. I'd always loved baking, but never imagined it would become our lifeline. I started selling homemade bread and pies from our kitchen to neighbors. When demand grew, I scraped together every penny I could borrow from my parents to lease a tiny storefront with a second-hand oven and mixer. I still remember the day we opened. Jason stood beside me, wearing a too-big apron I'd sewn him, proudly placing the open sign in the window of our little bakery. Those early years nearly broke me. 16-hour days became my normal. Up at 2 in the morning to start the bread, serving customers until 6 in the evening, then home to help with homework, only to catch 4 hours of sleep before starting all over again. Holidays were particularly brutal. While other mothers attended school plays and decorated Christmas trees, I was up to my elbows in flour, fulfilling orders. But those sacrifices meant Jason never went without. He had warm clothes, school supplies, and eventually college tuition. Not once did I let him feel the financial strain that kept me awake at night. The business grew slowly but steadily. By the time Jason was in high school, Sweet Comfort had 3 locations. I hired my first managers, giving me occasional Sundays off to watch Jason play baseball. He was a natural leader, popular and charismatic. I felt such pride seeing the confident young man he was becoming, despite growing up without a father. When Jason announced he wanted to attend business school, I remortgaged our home to make it happen. During those 4 years, I expanded to 6 locations. Every time he came home on break, I'd take him to see the new stores, hoping to ignite in him the same passion I had for what we were building. "This is all for you someday," I'd tell him. "Everything I've built." After graduation, he joined the business full-time. I was overjoyed to have my son working alongside me, ready to teach him everything I knew. And for a while, it seemed perfect. Jason had fresh ideas that helped modernize our operations. We expanded to 12 locations across 3 counties, becoming a regional name in artisanal baking. When Jason met Valerie 12 years ago, I was thrilled. She was smart, ambitious, and seemed to appreciate the business I'd built. Their wedding day was one of the happiest of my life. Finally, Jason had the complete family I couldn't give him growing up. I welcomed Valerie into both our family and business, creating a marketing position that showcased her talents. What I didn't realize then was how much time Jason was spending with Valerie's father, Walter. A real estate developer with a reputation for aggressive business tactics, Walter had made and lost fortunes through methods I would never employ. I noticed changes in Jason after their golf games and private lunches. Small comments about how I was leaving money on the table or how we could scale faster with outside investment. I should have seen the warning signs. But mothers have a way of making excuses for their children's behavior, especially when that child is all the family you have. The first real shock came last spring, when I discovered Jason had been meeting with corporate lawyers about succession planning without telling me. I found out by accident when a document was mistakenly emailed to me instead of him. There it was in black and white. A detailed strategy for transitioning control of Sweet Comfort Bakery away from me and into Jason's hands over the next 6 months. The document included phrases like managing founder resistance and controlling decision-making authority. It was as if I were an obstacle to be overcome rather than the woman who had built the entire operation from nothing. When confronted, Jason brushed it off. "Mom, you're 68. You should be thinking about retirement, not working 60-hour weeks. I was just exploring options for your benefit." Perhaps I wanted to believe him. Perhaps I couldn't face the alternative that my only child was plotting behind my back. So I smiled, accepted his explanation, and tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was, how I missed the way his tone had changed when discussing business matters, the slight impatience when I questioned decisions, the private calls that ended abruptly when I entered a room, the growing entitlement that had been nurtured by praise and privilege. I had given Jason everything, including my unwavering trust, and somewhere along the way, he had decided that wasn't enough. He didn't want to earn the business. He wanted to take it. The subtle shift in our relationship accelerated over the next 6 months. What began as gentle suggestions about my retirement turned into persistent pressure. Jason would leave retirement brochures on my desk or forward emails about luxury cruises for seniors. "Mom, you've earned a break," he'd say, his voice dripping with false concern. "Let me handle things. The stress isn't good for someone your age." Your age. As if 68 meant I was suddenly incapable of running the business I'd built from the ground up. My hands still shaped perfect croissants each morning. My mind still calculated profit margins and ingredient costs with precision. Yet in Jason's eyes, I had become a liability. Valerie joined this campaign with her own subtle tactics. She'd mention friends whose parents had such fulfilling retirements, or how her mother was enjoying the freedom of her golden years. These comments always came with sympathetic smiles that never reached her eyes. Meanwhile, changes were happening throughout our bakeries that troubled me deeply. Jason had started implementing new policies without consulting me. Employees who had been with me for years were being pushed out through reduced hours or reassignments. Recipes that had been our hallmark were modified to reduce costs, using cheaper ingredients that compromised quality. Maggie, my operations manager who had been with me for 15 years, was the first to voice concerns. "Esther, I don't want to cause trouble, but something's not right," she confided one afternoon. "Jason told me my position is being restructured. He's bringing in someone from a fast food chain to oversee operations." Paul, my head baker for 20 years, came to me next. "The new flour supplier Jason contracted makes inferior dough. When I complained, he told me we needed to modernize and that my methods were outdated." These loyal employees were the backbone of Sweet Comfort. They shared my commitment to quality and community, yet Jason was treating them as expendable in his vision for the company. The worst discovery came when I overheard Jason on a call with potential franchise investors. Franchising was something I had always resisted, believing it would compromise our quality and personal touch. Each Sweet Comfort bakery was unique to its neighborhood, with products tailored to local tastes. We knew our regular customers by name, remembered their children's birthdays, and supported local events. This connection was our strength, not a weakness to be eliminated for faster expansion. When I tried to discuss these concerns with Jason, he dismissed them immediately. "Mom, you're being too sentimental. This is business. We need to grow or die." "Our business grew because of those sentiments," I countered. "People come to us because we care about more than just profit." Jason rolled his eyes. "That might have worked 30 years ago, but the market has changed. We need to adapt or we'll be replaced." These conversations left me feeling both angry and profoundly sad. The son I raised seemed to have absorbed none of the values I'd tried to instill in him: integrity, community, quality without compromise. Instead, he spoke the language of Walter's world, where businesses were merely assets to be leveraged and employees were just numbers on a spreadsheet. Despite the growing tension, I still held on to hope that we could find common ground. So when Jason invited me to Christmas Eve dinner at his home, I accepted eagerly. Perhaps away from the office, surrounded by family and holiday spirit, we could reconnect as mother and son first, business partners second. I spent hours baking his favorite cookies and selecting thoughtful gifts for everyone. The night before the dinner, I stayed late at our flagship bakery, preparing special pastries to bring to the celebration. As I was locking up, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Looking forward to tomorrow. We can finally put all this business tension behind us and start fresh in the new year." Reading those words, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Maybe Jason had reflected on his behavior. Maybe Christmas would mark a new beginning for us. With renewed hope, I finished my preparations and went home to wrap the last of the presents. How wrong I was! How terribly, devastatingly wrong! The betrayal I thought I'd uncovered was merely the surface of a much deeper deception. On Christmas Eve, as I prepared to leave for Jason's house, I had no idea that within hours I would discover the full extent of my son's treachery. I arrived at Jason and Valerie's elegant suburban home, with arms full of carefully wrapped packages and freshly baked treats. Their house was picture-perfect for the holidays, with professional decorations and twinkling lights reflecting off the snow-covered lawn. So different from our modest celebrations when Jason was growing up, when we could only afford a small tree and homemade ornaments. Putting my car in park, I took a deep breath and prepared myself for what I hoped would be a healing evening. I had no way of knowing that I would leave that house not just heartbroken, but homeless in the bitter December night, or that by the following morning everything would change again in ways none of us could have anticipated. The wreath on Jason's front door was enormous, adorned with gold ribbons and perfectly arranged pine cones. Nothing like the simple greenery I used to hang when Jason was a boy. Back then, we'd make decorations together at our kitchen table, laughing as we strung cranberries and popcorn for the tree. Those handmade items had meant something because we created them together. Balancing a container of homemade Christmas cookies and a bag of wrapped gifts, I rang the doorbell. From inside came the sound of children's laughter, and for a moment my heart lightened. My grandchildren, Amy, 10, and Tyler, 8, were the lights of my life. No matter what tension existed between Jason and me, those children adored their grandmother, and the feeling was mutual. Valerie opened the door, her smile practiced and not quite reaching her eyes. "Esther, Merry Christmas," she said, stepping back to let me in. She wore an expensive-looking red cocktail dress, making my festive but simple outfit seem dowdy by comparison. "Grandma!" Two voices called out as Amy and Tyler came running into the foyer. Their genuine excitement was a balm to my spirit. "We made gingerbread houses at school," Amy announced, tugging at my hand. "But they weren't as good as when we bake with you. Mine fell apart, Tyler added with a giggle. Dad said we should just buy the pre-made ones next time. I knelt down to their level despite my arthritic knees. Store-bought is never as special as homemade, even when it falls apart. Especially when it falls apart, because then you get to eat the evidence. Both children laughed, and for a moment, everything felt right in the world. Jason appeared from the living room, holding a glass of what looked like expensive scotch. He was dressed in a crisp button-down shirt and designer slacks, a far cry from the flour-dusted aprons we both used to wear at the bakery. "Mom, glad you made it," he said, leaning in for a brief, stiff hug. I caught a whiff of alcohol on his breath, stronger than I would have expected so early in the evening. "Let me take those packages. Kids, give Grandma some space to get her coat off." The house was immaculate and expensively decorated, with a 12-foot Christmas tree dominating the living room. Every ornament matched in shades of gold and burgundy. No handprint reindeer or popsicle stick frames in sight. I thought about the box of childhood ornaments I still kept, the ones Jason had made in elementary school that he apparently had no interest in anymore. Dinner was already laid out in the formal dining room. A catered affair, I realized with disappointment. None of the traditional dishes I'd taught Jason to make over the years. Also present were Valerie's parents, Walter and Grace, seated at the table looking perfectly at ease. Walter nodded at me with something like smugness, while Grace offered a warmer but uncomfortable smile. Jason's sister-in-law, Linda, was also there, married to Valerie's brother, who was apparently traveling for work. Linda had always been kind to me and seemed genuinely pleased to see me arrive. "Esther, happy holidays," she said, giving me a sincere hug. "I've been telling everyone how much I love those cranberry orange scones from your downtown location. No one does pastry like Sweet Comfort." "She's been singing your praises all evening," Walter said with an edge to his voice, "though I keep telling her large-scale operation is where the real profit lies. Artisanal is charming, but limited." And there it was. The first jab of what would become a battlefield by dessert. The meal progressed with superficial pleasantness. We discussed the children's school activities and local news, carefully avoiding any mention of the bakery. The grandchildren entertained us with stories of their holiday program, and I savored their animation and innocence. "Grandma taught me how to make snow angels last winter," Amy told everyone as we moved to dessert. "She said that's what she and Dad used to do when he was little." Jason shifted uncomfortably. "That was a long time ago. But we're going to do it again, right?" Tyler asked me eagerly. "You said we could make a snow fort, too." "Of course, sweetheart," I promised, though something in Jason's expression made me wonder if he had other ideas. After dessert, while the children were distracted with a Christmas movie, Jason suggested the adults have coffee in his home office. My stomach tensed as we filed into the wood-paneled room with its large desk and imposing bookshelves. This didn't feel like casual after-dinner conversation. "Mom," Jason began once we were all seated, "I thought Christmas Eve would be the perfect time to settle our business matters before the new year." The room seemed to chill despite the crackling fireplace. So this was the real purpose of the invitation. "I've prepared the transfer documents," he continued, pulling a folder from his desk drawer. "Everything's ready for your signature." "Transfer documents?" I repeated, though I knew exactly what he meant. "Jason, I thought we were here to celebrate Christmas as a family." "We are," he said smoothly. "And what better gift could there be than peace of mind? You sign these papers, and you can finally relax, knowing the business is in good hands." "My hands." Valerie nodded enthusiastically beside him. "Just think, Esther, no more early mornings or bookkeeping headaches. You could travel, take up hobbies, spend more time with the grandkids. While you spend more time with my business, I said flatly. Our business, Jason corrected, his voice hardening. The business I've been helping run for years, while you resist every attempt at modernization. Walter cleared his throat. Jason has some excellent plans for expansion. Very impressive projections. The kind of growth that requires younger, more aggressive leadership. I looked around the room, realizing this had been orchestrated all along. The holiday invitation was merely a Trojan horse to corner me with all of them as witnesses. Even Grace looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes. I'm not signing anything, I said firmly. Sweet Comfort isn't ready for the changes you want to make, Jason, and frankly, neither are you. His face flushed with anger. Mom, be reasonable. You're not getting any younger. Do you really want to spend your remaining years struggling with inventory and payroll? My remaining years? I repeated incredulously. I'm 68, not on my deathbed, and I don't struggle with the business. I thrive on it. You're being selfish, Valerie interjected, her mask of politeness slipping. Jason has put years into that company. He deserves to take the reins now, not when you decide to finally let go. That company exists because I built it from nothing, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm, while raising a child alone, I might add. Here we go, Jason muttered. The single mother martyrdom again. His words struck me like a physical blow. All those years of sacrifice reduced to martyrdom in his eyes. All those nights I'd gone without so he could have what he needed dismissed as manipulation. Jason, Linda said quietly from the corner. That's not fair. He ignored her. Mom, you should know I've already spoken to our key clients, suppliers, and bank officials. They're expecting me to assume full control in January. The paperwork is a formality at this point. The room spun around me. You did what? Without my knowledge or consent? Because you wouldn't listen to reason, he shouted, suddenly losing his composure. You're holding on to power because you have nothing else in your life. The business is all you have, and you can't stand the thought of letting someone else take over, even your own son. I stood up, my hands shaking. You have no right to make promises about my company to anyone, no right to decide when I'm done. Our company, he repeated through clenched teeth. And I have every right as the future owner. Future, perhaps, but not present. Not until I decide the time is right and you're ready. And after this ambush, I'm not sure you ever will be. I moved toward the door, needing air, needing escape from this nightmare masquerading as Christmas Eve. Where are you going? Jason demanded. We're not finished here. I am, I said simply. I'm going to say goodnight to my grandchildren, and then I'm leaving. Not until you sign these papers, he insisted, blocking my path. I've put too much in motion to back down now. Looking into my son's face, I barely recognized him. The loving boy who once stood proudly beside me in a too-big apron was gone. In his place was a stranger, consumed by entitlement and greed. Move acide, Jason. Sign the papers, Mom. No, what happened next will haunt me forever. My son, my only child, grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the desk. You're being irrational. This is happening whether you like it or not. I jerked away from his grip, knocking over a side table in the process. The crash brought the children running from the other room. Dad? Grandma? What's happening? Amy's voice trembled. Valerie quickly moved to intercept them. Nothing, sweetie. Grandma isn't feeling well. She needs to go home and rest. I feel fine, I protested. Jason, don't do this. But he was already retrieving my coat, his jaw set in determination. Mom's right, kids. She's not well. I'm going to help her to her car. But she just got here, Tyler objected, and we haven't opened her presents. Another time, Jason said firmly. I looked at my grandchildren's confused faces, at Linda's horrified expression, at Walter's satisfied smirk. This couldn't be happening. "I want to stay," I insisted. "This is Christmas Eve, our family tradition." "Not anymore," Jason said coldly, taking my arm again and guiding me forcefully toward the front door. "Times change, Mom. Either change with them or get left behind." He retrieved my purse and car keys while Valerie distracted the children. Then, in a final indignity, he placed my unopened gifts and container of homemade cookies in my arms and opened the front door, letting in a blast of winter air. "Think about what you're throwing away," he said quietly. "Your future relationship with those grandchildren in there depends on your decision. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." And with that, my son pushed me out of his house and closed the door, leaving me standing alone in the cold, clutching cookies and presents meant for a Christmas celebration that would never happen. Through the frosted glass, I could see him turn away without a backward glance, returning to his perfect home and the family I was suddenly no longer part of. As snowflakes began to settle on my shoulders, I fumbled with my car keys, tears freezing on my cheeks before they could fall. The betrayal cut deeper than the winter chill, but a resolve was hardening within me. Tomorrow would bring a very different kind of gift for my ungrateful son. Driving home through the snowfall, my vision blurred with tears. Twice I had to pull over to compose myself, my hands shaking too badly to grip the steering wheel. At one intersection, I nearly collided with another car, the horn blast shocking me back to attention. My son had just thrown me out like a stranger, and here I was, risking my life on icy roads because I couldn't see through my grief. The Christmas lights on every house I passed mocked me with their cheerfulness. Families were gathering, celebrating, sharing love and warmth while I drove alone toward an empty home. The home where I'd raised Jason, taught him to ride a bike, nursed him through chickenpox, celebrated his academic achievements. The same home he now deemed me unworthy of respect in. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the sight of my own Christmas decorations nearly undid me completely. I'd put them up with such hope, planning to host Jason and his family the day after Christmas. The wreath I'd made myself. The lights strung along the porch railings that had taken hours to arrange. The inflatable snowman in the yard that the neighborhood children loved. All for a celebration that would never happen now. Inside wasn't any better. My small Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, surrounded by carefully wrapped presents for Jason, Valerie, and the grandchildren. The dining room table was already set with my good china, ready for the meal I'd planned to cook. A ham waited in the refrigerator, alongside ingredients for all of Jason's childhood favorite dishes. I sank onto the couch, still wearing my coat, and finally gave in to the sobs that had been building since I left Jason's house. Deep, wrenching cries that seemed to come from somewhere primal inside me. The kind of weeping that leaves you gasping for air and physically exhausted. How had it come to this? Where had I gone wrong as a mother? What kind of son threatens his mother with access to her grandchildren in exchange for her life's work? My gaze fell on the family photos arranged on my mantel. Jason's graduation from business school, me standing proudly beside him. His wedding day, where I'd danced with joy. Amy's baptism, with me holding my first grandchild. Tyler's 5th birthday party at the bakery, where we'd made cupcakes together. Happy moments that now seemed like scenes from someone else's life. The phone rang, startling me from my dark thoughts. It was almost midnight on Christmas Eve. Who would be calling? For one wild moment, I thought perhaps Jason had come to his senses, was calling to apologize, to beg forgiveness. But the caller ID showed Dorothy, my best friend of 30 years. Somehow, she always seemed to know when I needed her most. "Esther, is everything okay? I had the strangest feeling I should check on you." At the sound of her familiar, concerned voice, fresh tears sprang to my eyes. "Oh, Dorothy, it's all gone so terribly wrong." Through broken sobs, I recounted the evening's events. Dorothy listened without interrupting, making only soft sounds of sympathy and outrage in all the right places. "He threw you out?" she finally said, disbelief evident in her voice. "His own mother? On Christmas Eve?" "He wants the business," I explained. "He's already told people he's taking over in January. He's been working behind my back for months." Dorothy was silent for a moment. "You know what this reminds me of?" she finally said. "When Tom left you with nothing but a young child and a mountain of debt. Everyone said you were finished then, too." The memory was still painful after all these years. "What does that have to do with this?" "Everything," Dorothy replied firmly. "Back then, you created a business that saved both you and Jason from poverty. You built something from nothing through sheer determination and talent. Are you really going to let your son steal your life's work now?" Her words struck something inside me, a long, dormant spark of the fighter I used to be. The woman who had faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. "What can I do?" I asked, wiping away tears. "He's already told our suppliers and clients he's taking over." "Without your authorization?" "Esther, that's not just wrong. It might be illegal. Have you spoken to Frank about this?" Frank Thompson had been my attorney since I opened the first bakery. He'd helped me incorporate, draft contracts, and navigate the complex legal aspects of growing a business. "No, it's Christmas Eve." I couldn't bother him now. "This is an emergency," Dorothy insisted. "Frank adores you. He'll want to know what's happening." She was right. If Jason was already moving to take control of Sweet Comfort, waiting until after the holidays could be disastrous. With shaking fingers, I dialed Frank's number, expecting to leave a voicemail. To my surprise, he answered on the third ring. "Frank Thompson." "Frank, it's Esther. I'm so sorry to call this late on Christmas Eve." "Esther?" His voice immediately shifted from formal to concerned. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Once again, I explained the situation, this time with more composure. Frank listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I mentioned Jason's claim that he'd already spoken to our bank about taking control, Frank's tone sharpened. "He has no legal authority to do that. You're the majority shareholder and CEO. This is very serious, Esther." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling utterly lost. "First, let me check something. Can you access your company banking portal from home?" I had my laptop nearby and logged into our business accounts while Frank waited on the phone. What I saw made my blood run cold. "Frank, there are transfers I didn't authorize. Large amounts to accounts I don't recognize. And it looks like my admin permissions have been downgraded. I can't see everything I normally would." Frank's voice turned grim. "This crosses the line from family dispute to potential criminal action. Esther, I know it's Christmas, but this can't wait. Can you meet me at my office first thing tomorrow morning? 7 a.m.? "Yes, of course." "Good. I'll make some calls tonight. We may need a court officer present to document what's happening. Try to gather any relevant documents you have at home that establish your ownership and Jason's recent behavior." As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. The weeping woman of an hour ago was gone. In her place was the determined entrepreneur who had built a business from scratch while the world bet against her. I moved to my home office and began pulling files, reviewing ownership documents, board meeting minutes, and recent communications with Jason. As I worked, a notification popped up on my phone. a banking alert for another attempted transfer from our business account to an unknown destination. My son wasn't even waiting for Christmas to be over before trying to drain the company I'd built with decades of sweat and sacrifice. Reaching for my phone again, I did something I'd never imagined doing. I called our bank's fraud department emergency line and reported unauthorized access to our business accounts. The representative was professional and efficient, immediately placing temporary holds on all transfers pending investigation. "Mrs. Parker, we'll need you to come in as soon as possible to verify your identity and review recent activity," she explained. "I'll be there first thing in the morning," I promised. Next, I emailed Maggie and Paul, apologizing for disturbing their Christmas, but warning them about potential changes Jason might try to implement without proper authority. Their responses came quickly, both expressing outrage and pledging support. Maggie's message was particularly illuminating. "Esther, I should have told you sooner. Jason has been telling managers for weeks that you're becoming mentally unstable and can't handle stress anymore. He suggested we direct all major decisions to him to avoid upsetting you. Nobody believed him, but we didn't want to cause trouble during the holidays." My hands clenched into fists as I read her words. So that was his angle. Paint me as incompetent, too fragile to run my own company. Create a narrative that would justify pushing me aside for my own good. As midnight approached on what should have been a peaceful Christmas Eve, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by business documents, my phone buzzing with supportive messages from loyal employees. The cookies I'd baked for Jason's family sat untouched in their container. I thought of Amy and Tyler, confused by the scene they'd witnessed, perhaps being told right now that Grandma was sick or confused or difficult. The thought nearly broke my heart all over again. Then my phone chimed with a text message. From Amy's phone, though I knew my 10-year-old granddaughter should be asleep by now. "Grandma, why did Daddy tell us you're sick in the head and might have to go to a special hospital?" I stared at the screen in shock, tears welling up again. So Jason was already poisoning my grandchildren against me, using the cruelest lie imaginable. Before I could formulate a response, another text came through. I told him, "You're not sick. You make the best cookies and tell the best stories. Sick people can't do that." Despite everything, a small smile formed on my lips. Children often see truth more clearly than adults. I carefully typed back, "I'm not sick, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things. But I love you and Tyler very much. Try to get some sleep now. It's Christmas Eve. I love you too, Grandma. Merry Christmas." As I set down my phone, a new determination filled me. This wasn't just about protecting my business anymore. This was about standing up to lies and manipulation that threatened to destroy everything I valued, including my relationship with my grandchildren. Jason had chosen this battlefield. He had fired the first shots. And while it broke my heart to be at war with my own son, I would not surrender what I had built through decades of honest work to his greed and deception. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, would bring a reckoning none of us had planned for. But unlike Jason, I would face it with truth and integrity, the same values that had guided me through building Sweet Comfort Bakery from nothing but hope and determination. The same values he had apparently forgotten along the way. Dawn broke cold and clear on Christmas morning, sunlight glinting off fresh snow. Under normal circumstances, I would have woken to phone calls from Jason and the grandchildren, excited voices sharing Christmas joy across the miles. This morning, my phone remained silent, except for a text from Frank confirming our 7 a.m. meeting. I dressed carefully, choosing a professional pantsuit rather than the festive Christmas sweater I'd planned to wear. This wasn't a day for celebration anymore. This was business, and I needed to look the part of the capable CEO I'd been for 35 years. Frank's downtown office building was nearly deserted, holiday silence hanging over the normally bustling corridors. But when I reached his suite, I found not only Frank waiting, but also a court officer in uniform and a representative from First National Bank. "Esther," Frank greeted me, his normally jovial face serious. "I'd like you to meet Officer James Wilson from the county court and Sandra Nichols from the Fraud Prevention Department at First National. They're both giving up their Christmas morning to help address this situation." I shook hands with both, gratitude overwhelming me. "I can't thank you enough. I never expected this level of response, especially today." Sandra spoke first. "Mrs. Parker, the attempted transfers from your business accounts last night raised several red flags in our system. The amounts were substantial, and the destination accounts have only recently been established. When you called our fraud line, it corroborated our concerns. We've temporarily frozen all accounts pending verification of authorized signatories," she continued. "But we need to establish legitimate control quickly to prevent disruption to your business operations." Officer Wilson explained his role next. "Based on the evidence Mr. Thompson presented to the on-call judge last night, we have an emergency injunction ready to serve. It will temporarily bar Jason Parker from making any financial decisions or representations on behalf of Sweet Comfort Bakery, pending a full hearing." Frank laid out a stack of documents on his desk. "Esther, I need you to sign these. They formally document your ownership status, Jason's unauthorized actions, and your request for legal intervention." As I began signing my name to page after page, a strange mixture of sadness and resolve filled me. Never had I imagined needing legal protection from my own son. Yet here I was on Christmas morning, setting in motion proceedings that would forever change our relationship. "There's something else you should know," I said, looking up from the paperwork. "I received a text from my granddaughter last night. Jason told the children, 'I'm mentally unstable and might need hospitalization.'" Frank's expression darkened. "That's troubling on multiple levels. It suggests he's building a narrative to challenge your competency, which would allow him to potentially take control of the business despite your objections," Officer Wilson added. "We see this tactic in elder abuse cases sometimes." Elder abuse. The term hit me like a physical blow. Was that what this had become? My own son attempting to manipulate and intimidate me out of what was rightfully mine under the guise of concern for my well-being? As if reading my thoughts, Sandra spoke gently. "Mrs. Parker, if you don't mind my saying, you appear perfectly cogent and capable to me. I've reviewed your business accounts as part of our fraud investigation. Sweet Comfort shows consistent growth, excellent cash flow management, and prudent financial decisions. These are not the records of someone whose judgment is impaired." Her words strengthened my resolve. "Thank you for that. I've run this business successfully for 35 years. Nothing about my capacity to continue has changed." "Let's focus on immediate actions," Frank suggested. "The court officer will serve Jason with the emergency injunction. The bank will require in-person verification before releasing the account freeze. And we should consider whether to pursue criminal charges regarding the unauthorized transfers. Criminal charges against my own son. The thought made me physically ill, despite everything he'd done. "Let's hold off on that decision," I said quietly. "The injunction and account restrictions should be enough to stop him for now. I need time to think about next steps." As our meeting continued, my phone buzzed with incoming messages, loyal employees checking in, concerned about the company's future. Suppliers who had received strange calls from Jason, claiming authority he didn't possess. Even competitors reaching out after hearing rumors of turmoil at Sweet Comfort. Then a different kind of message appeared that made my blood run cold. A brief video clip from Jason, showing him in his home office with documents spread before him. "Found these recordings while organizing files this morning," the text read. "Thought you might want to hear yourself forgetting basic business details. Might be time to consider that the problem isn't me, Mom." With trembling fingers, I played the clip with the volume low so the others wouldn't hear. It was my voice, apparently struggling to recall figures from a meeting earlier that year. Except the recording had clearly been edited, removing my initial correct statements and keeping only my momentary confusion when Jason had interrupted with contradictory numbers. "He's been recording our conversations," I whispered, showing Frank the message, manipulating them to make me sound confused. Frank's expression hardened. "This crosses yet another line. Recording business meetings without consent of all parties is problematic enough. Editing them to create a false impression is potentially criminal." Officer Wilson leaned forward. "Mrs. Parker, I don't mean to overstep, but this behavior shows premeditation and malice. Your son isn't just making impulsive mistakes. He's executing a calculated plan to undermine you." The truth of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a son impatient for his inheritance. This was a deliberate campaign to discredit and displace me. "I understand," I said, my voice stronger now. "Let's proceed with the injunction immediately." As Officer Wilson prepared to leave, my phone chimed again with another text from Amy. "Merry Christmas, Grandma. When are you coming over?" "Dad said you might not because you're confused today." Anger flared within me, hot and clarifying. Using my grandchildren as pawns in this battle was beyond unconscionable. "Change of plans," I told Frank and Officer Wilson. "I want to be present when the injunction is served." Frank looked concerned. "Esther, that could escalate an already volatile situation. My grandchildren are being told I'm mentally unwell. I won't hide and let that narrative stand. If Jason wants to claim I'm incompetent, he can say it to my face while a court officer is present." Officer Wilson considered this. "It's not standard procedure, but there's no legal reason you can't be present. The documents will speak for themselves regardless." Sandra from the bank offered her support as well. "I can come too. If there are questions about the account freezes, I can address them directly." Within 30 minutes, we had finalized our plans. I would accompany Officer Wilson to Jason's home to witness the serving of the injunction. Sandra would join us to explain the banking restrictions. Frank would remain on standby for legal questions. As we prepared to leave, I took a moment alone in Frank's office to steady myself. On the desk lay the documents that would formally declare legal hostilities against my only child. The birth certificate I'd brought as proof of relationship showed a tiny footprint from 35 years ago. The same foot that had taken first steps while holding my fingers, that had kicked soccer balls in our backyard, that had walked across a graduation stage. Now that foot had kicked me out into the cold on Christmas Eve. With a deep breath, I gathered my courage and rejoined the others. "I'm ready," I said, though my heart was breaking all over again. "Let's go." As we drove through neighborhoods where families were celebrating Christmas morning, I wondered what permanent damage this day would bring to our already fractured family. But I also knew that sometimes the most painful actions are the necessary ones, especially when protecting something precious that took a lifetime to build. My son had made his choices. Now he would face the consequences of attempting to steal not just a business, but my dignity and reputation as well. Christmas morning would indeed bring a gift to Jason Parker's door, but not one he would welcome or soon forget. Christmas morning at Jason's house would normally be filled with the excited shrieks of children unwrapping presents, the aroma of cinnamon rolls baking, and the warm glow of family togetherness. Today, I sat in my car across the street, watching that scene through windows, an outsider to the celebration. Through the large picture window, I could see Amy and Tyler on the floor beside the enormous Christmas tree, surrounded by torn wrapping paper. Valerie sat on the sofa in a festive red robe, taking photos with her phone. Jason moved in and out of view, carrying coffee mugs and looking completely unbothered by the events of the previous evening. Officer Wilson sat beside me in the passenger seat, reviewing the injunction documents one last time. Sandra waited in her own car behind us, having followed from downtown. "Are you certain you want to be present for this, Mrs. Parker?" Officer Wilson asked gently. "I can serve these papers professionally and discreetly." I watched as Jason ruffled Tyler's hair, playing the role of devoted father while plotting to destroy his mother's reputation. "I'm certain," I replied. "Some things need to be witnessed firsthand." We approached the house together, climbing the same steps I had ascended with such hope just 12 hours earlier. Officer Wilson rang the doorbell, while I stood slightly behind him, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. The door swung open, and Jason's smile of greeting froze when he saw who stood on his doorstep. His eyes darted from the uniformed officer to me, confusion quickly shifting to anger. "What is this?" he demanded. Officer Wilson maintained a professional demeanor. "Jason Parker? I'm Officer James Wilson with the county court. I'm here to serve you with legal documents." He extended the envelope containing the injunction. Jason made no move to take it, his gaze fixed on me. "Mom, what have you done?" "What I had to do," I replied evenly. "You left me no choice." From inside the house came Amy's voice. "Dad? Who's at the door? Is it more presents?" "Stay inside, sweetheart," Jason called over his shoulder, then lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. "You're really doing this? On Christmas morning in front of my children?" "You started this on Christmas Eve," I reminded him, "in front of those same children." Officer Wilson cleared his throat. "Mr. Parker, I need you to accept these documents. They constitute an emergency injunction regarding Sweet Comfort Bakery." At the mention of the business, Jason's face flushed with anger. He snatched the envelope and attempted to close the door. Officer Wilson smoothly placed his foot in the gap. "I need to verbally confirm the contents, sir. This injunction temporarily bars you from making any financial decisions or representations on behalf of Sweet Comfort Bakery pending a full hearing. Additionally, all company accounts have been frozen due to suspicious activity detected last night." Jason's face drained of color. "What suspicious activity? That's ridiculous." Sandra stepped forward from where she had been waiting. "Mr. Parker, I'm Sandra Nichols from First National Bank's Fraud Prevention Department. Multiple unauthorized transfers were attempted from Sweet Comfort Bakery accounts last night. As a security measure, all accounts have been temporarily frozen." The door opened wider as Valerie appeared beside Jason. "What's going on? Esther? What are you doing here?" Before anyone could respond, I glimpsed movement behind them. Walter and Grace had apparently stayed overnight and were now witnessing this unfolding scene from the hallway. Walter's expression darkened as he recognized the official nature of the visit. "Jason, don't say another word," Walter called out, striding toward the door. "This is harassment. We'll file a complaint." Officer Wilson remained unmoved. "Sir, I'm executing a lawful court order. Interference would be inadvisable." By now, the commotion had drawn Amy and Tyler from their presence. They peered around the adults, their faces lighting up when they spotted me. "Grandma!" Tyler exclaimed. attempting to push past his father to reach me. "You came for Christmas after all." Jason blocked his son's movement. "Not now, Tyler. Grandma isn't here to celebrate. She's here to cause problems." "That's not true," I said, kneeling to Tyler's eye level despite the tension. "I'm here because sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that need to be solved properly." Amy joined her brother, her young face serious. "Is this about Dad saying you're sick in the head?" I told him that's not true. A hush fell over the adults. Jason's face contorted with embarrassment and rage. "Amy, that was a private conversation." "You told the children I'm mentally ill?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from Amy's text. Valerie jumped to Jason's defense. "You're clearly not well, Esther. No rational person would bring police to a family home on Christmas morning." "This is a court officer, not police," I corrected. "And I'm here because Jason attempted to transfer company funds without authorization after telling me he'd already arranged to take control in January." "This is a family matter," Jason insisted, glaring at Officer Wilson. "There's been a misunderstanding." "Financial fraud isn't a family misunderstanding," Sandra interjected. "The bank takes unauthorized access to business accounts very seriously." More movement at the door revealed Linda appearing from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Her eyes widened, taking in the scene. "Esther? What's happening?" she asked. "Your brother-in-law tried to steal my company," I said simply. "First by manipulation, then by force, and finally by fraud when those didn't work." "That's absurd," Walter barked. Jason was implementing a standard succession plan for a founder who's clearly past her prime. "A succession plan requires my consent," I replied, my voice steady, which I never gave. The confrontation might have continued escalating had Valerie's mother Grace not stepped forward, placing a restraining hand on Walter's arm. "Perhaps we should all take a breath," she suggested, looking genuinely distressed by the public spectacle. Officer Wilson seized the moment. "Mr. Parker, I've officially served you with the court documents. I recommend you review them with legal counsel before taking any further action regarding Sweet Comfort Bakery. The hearing date is included in the paperwork." Jason clutched the envelope with white knuckles, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. "You'll regret this, Mom. I was trying to help you, to give you the retirement you deserve. By telling my grandchildren I belong in a hospital? By recording and editing our conversations to make me sound incompetent? By attempting to drain company accounts on Christmas Eve?" Each question landed like a blow, causing Jason to flinch. "That doesn't sound like help to me." A movement from Walter caught my attention. He had pulled out his phone and seemed to be urgently texting someone. His face showed not just anger, but something that looked surprisingly like fear. "Walter," I said, suddenly understanding. "This isn't just about Jason's impatience, is it? What's your stake in this?" All eyes turned to Walter, whose complexion had taken on an unhealthy pallor. He shoved his phone back in his pocket. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm simply supporting my son-in-law." "Dad?" Valerie looked confused. What does she mean? The moment hung suspended until Linda spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "The rumors about Westfield Development being in trouble. They're true, aren't they, Walter?" Walter's face twisted with rage. "Keep your mouth shut about things you don't understand." But Linda continued, looking directly at me. "My husband told me in confidence. Walter's company is under investigation. Several projects failed environmental reviews, and there are allegations of cut corners and bribes. The banks are calling in loans." The pieces suddenly fit together with terrible clarity. Walter wasn't merely encouraging Jason's ambition. He needed control of my profitable, debt-free business to save himself from financial ruin. "Is this true?" Valerie demanded of her father. "You pushed Jason to take over Sweet Comfort because you need the money?" Walter's silence was answer enough. Jason looked between his father-in-law and me, his expression shifting from anger to confusion. Walter assured me this was the right time, that Mom would adjust to retirement once it was done. "And you believed him without question," I said sadly. "Without considering why I built this business or what it means to me. Without respecting that, I might know better than either of you when and how to step aside." Walter finally found his voice. "This changes nothing. The injunction is temporary. Once we get to court, we'll show that Esther is resistant to necessary change, emotionally attached to outdated methods. We'll also show the recordings of my mother's confused state," Jason added, grasping at straws. Officer Wilson, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "If you're referring to edited recordings made without consent, I would advise against introducing those in court. Manipulating evidence is a serious offense." Jason's confident facade cracked further. He looked less like a scheming businessman now, and more like a child caught in a lie too big to maintain. "I just wanted what was rightfully mine," he said, his voice smaller. "Nothing is rightfully yours until it's earned or freely given," I told him. "That business saved us when your father abandoned us. I built it with years of sacrifice while raising you alone. It was never just an asset to be transferred on your timeline." The mention of his absent father seemed to hit Jason hard. He had few memories of Tom, but the wound of abandonment had shaped him in ways neither of us had fully acknowledged. "I didn't know about Walter's problems," he said, a hint of desperation entering his voice. "I honestly thought this was best for everyone." "Best for everyone?" I repeated. "You threw me out of your home on Christmas Eve. You told my grandchildren I'm mentally ill. You tried to drain company accounts. Which part of that was for my benefit?" Jason had no answer, his righteous indignation finally collapsing under the weight of his actions laid bare. In the uncomfortable silence that followed, Tyler tugged at my coat. "Grandma, does this mean you can't stay for Christmas?" The innocent question broke through the tension, reminding everyone that two children were witnessing this adult conflict on what should have been a joyful day. "I think Grandma needs to go for now," I said gently, kneeling to his level again. "But I promise we'll have our own special day very soon." "With cookies?" he asked hopefully. "With all the cookies you can eat," I assured him with a smile. As I straightened up, I noticed something unexpected. Jason was crying. Not the manipulative tears of someone caught, but the genuine grief of someone finally seeing the consequences of their actions. "What happens now?" he asked. "All pretense gone. Now we follow the legal process," I said firmly. "The injunction stays in place. The accounts remain frozen until proper authority is established. And you have some serious thinking to do about what kind of man you want to be. Our business was temporarily protected by the court order, but the deeper damage to our family would take much longer to address, if it could be repaired at all." As Officer Wilson, Sandra, and I prepared to leave, I took one last look at the Christmas scene I'd been excluded from just a day earlier. The beautiful decorations, the expensive gifts, the picture-perfect holiday that had concealed so much deception. None of it seemed to matter anymore against the broken trust between mother and son. "Merry Christmas," I said softly to my grandchildren as I turned to go. "Remember that Grandma loves you, no matter what." As we walked back to our cars, I realized that this confrontation, painful as it was, had been necessary. Sometimes the greatest gift is truth, even when it comes wrapped in heartbreak and delivered on Christmas morning. The weeks following that fateful Christmas morning unfolded in ways none of us could have predicted. The emergency injunction remained in place as we moved through the legal process. An emergency board meeting was called, where I presented evidence of Jason's actions to the small group of minority shareholders and advisors who had been with Sweet Comfort from nearly the beginning. Their shock and support strengthened my resolve to handle this situation firmly, but with the door to redemption left slightly ajar. After all, despite everything, Jason was still my son. A full audit revealed the extent of Jason's attempted financial manipulation. He had created new bank accounts under the company name, but with himself as sole signatory. He had approached key suppliers about changing payment terms without board approval. He had even drafted letters to our largest customers announcing his new leadership role, ready to send on January 1st. Most disturbing were the recordings. Jason had secretly recorded numerous conversations over the previous 6 months, editing them to remove context and create the impression I was becoming forgetful or confused. These manipulated clips had been shared with several managers and board members as evidence of my declining capacity. The betrayal cut deep, yet facing these painful truths brought clarity. This wasn't just about Jason's impatience or ambition. Walter's influence had poisoned my son's thinking, convincing him that aggressive tactics and dishonesty were acceptable business strategies. As January turned to February, I made one of the most difficult decisions of my career. Jason would be removed from operations at Sweet Comfort Bakery, effective immediately. However, I established conditions for a potential return path that included business ethics courses, therapy, and a probationary period working from entry-level positions under supervision. You need to remember why we built this business and how we treat people, I told him, during our first civil conversation since Christmas. Not just what the quarterly numbers look like. Jason accepted the decision with unexpected humility. The collapse of his scheme and the public revelation of Walter's financial troubles had stripped away his arrogance, leaving behind the uncertain young man he truly was. With Jason's departure, I needed trusted leadership more than ever. Maggie, my operations manager of 15 years, stepped up to take on greater responsibilities. Paul, my veteran head baker, became vice president of product development, ensuring our quality standards would never be compromised. And surprisingly, Linda, Jason's sister-in-law, approached me with interest in joining the company. Her background in finance and her steadfast ethical stance during the family crisis impressed me. Within weeks, she proved herself a valuable addition to our executive team. "I always admired what you built," Linda confessed during a late-night planning session. "The way you balance quality and community with running a successful business. It's rare." Meanwhile, I made certain to maintain my relationship with Amy and Tyler, despite the strain between their parents and me. Weekend baking sessions at my house became a regular occurrence, free from business talk or family drama, just a grandmother passing down recipes and traditions to the next generation. "Dad seems really sad these days," Amy observed one Saturday as we shaped dinner rolls together. At 11, she was perceptive beyond her years. "Growing up is hard, even for grown-ups," I told her. "Your dad is learning some important lessons right now. About not taking things that don't belong to him?" she asked with childlike directness. I smiled gently. "About earning trust and respect. Those are things you can't just take or demand. You have to deserve them." Jason and Valerie initially responded to the court decisions with anger and threats of further legal action. But when Walter's company publicly faced fraud allegations, their position weakened considerably. Walter had indeed been counting on accessing Sweet Comfort's resources to shore up his failing real estate developments. When that plan collapsed, so did his facade of business acumen. 3 months after Christmas, Jason reached out to request a meeting, alone. We met at a neutral location, a small cafe downtown, far from either the bakery headquarters or family homes. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said, after we'd ordered coffee, unable to quite meet my eyes. "She's helping me understand why I did what I did." "And what have you learned?" I asked, neither encouraging nor dismissing his attempt at conversation. "That I've been angry at Dad for leaving us, and somehow transferred that to you," he said quietly. "That I felt entitled to the business because I thought it was payment for growing up without a father. That Walter manipulated those feelings for his own benefit. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. A recognition of the complex emotions that had driven his betrayal. The business was never meant to be payment for anything, I told him. It was meant to be a legacy, something built on values worth passing down." Jason nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. "I understand that now. Too late, probably." "It's never too late to choose a better path forward," I said, surprised by the forgiveness beginning to soften my heart. "But trust takes time to rebuild." Over the following months, Jason began that rebuilding process in earnest. He enrolled in business ethics courses at the local college. He found a job at a competing bakery, starting as a delivery driver rather than an executive. He attended family therapy sessions with Valerie, whose eyes had been opened by her father's deception. 6 months after our Christmas confrontation, Jason approached me with a business plan. Not a demand to return to Sweet Comfort, but a proposal for his own small venture. A specialty bread bakery focusing on ancient grains and traditional methods. "I'd like your advice," he said, sliding the folder across my kitchen table. "Not your money or connections, just your honest opinion." I reviewed his plans carefully, noting the emphasis on sustainable ingredients and community involvement, values that echoed what Sweet Comfort had always stood for, but with Jason's own innovative twist. "This has potential," I told him truthfully. "You've clearly done your research and thought about more than just profit margins." "I had a good teacher," he replied, the first genuine smile between us in a long time. Meanwhile, Sweet Comfort Bakery was thriving under new collaborative leadership. The temporary setback of the Christmas crisis had ultimately led to stronger governance and renewed focus on our core values. We expanded to 14 locations with a refreshed commitment to quality and community involvement. Maggie, Paul, Linda, and I formed an executive committee that met weekly to ensure decisions were made collaboratively. I began working with a succession planning expert to create a genuine, thoughtful transition for when I eventually did retire. This time the process would be transparent and based on merit rather than manipulation. 1 year after that painful Christmas, our family gathered for dinner at my home. The atmosphere was tentative, but hopeful. Jason and Valerie brought the children, who were overjoyed at the semblance of family normalcy. Linda and her husband joined us, their presence bridging old divides. Walter and Grace were notably absent. Their marriage had not survived the financial and legal scandals that continued to plague Walter's business dealings. Grace had reached out to me separately, apologizing for her passive role in the Christmas events and requesting a relationship independent of the business conflicts. As we sat around my dining table, sharing a meal prepared with love, Jason raised his glass in an unexpected toast. "To my mother," he said, his voice steady but emotional, "who taught me that a legacy isn't something you take. It's something you build, with integrity and hard work over a lifetime." Tears sprang to my eyes as glasses clinked around the table. The road to this moment had been painful beyond measure, but the lessons learned along the way had transformed all of us. Jason's new bakery had opened the previous month, small, but already developing a loyal following. He operated it with Valerie, who had discovered a talent for customer relations when stripped of the entitlement that had clouded her judgment. They worked long hours, experienced the stress of meeting payroll, and felt the satisfaction of creating something authentic with their own hands. In essence, they were learning what I had known all along, that a business built on solid values is more than just a financial asset. It's a living legacy that reflects the character of its founders and shapes the lives it touches. Sweet Comfort continued forward with renewed purpose. The succession plan we developed included roles for trusted employees like Maggie and Paul, as well as newer contributors like Linda, who embodied our core values. When I eventually did step back from day-to-day operations, it would be a graduated, dignified transition rather than a forced removal. As for Jason, our relationship would never return to what it had been before that Christmas Eve confrontation. Too much had been revealed about both of us. But something new and potentially stronger was taking its place, a relationship based on earned respect rather than obligatory family ties. Standing at my kitchen window after everyone had gone home, watching snow fall gently in my backyard, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From the depths of betrayal on a cold Christmas Eve to the tentative hope of a family rebuilding itself on honest foundations, the business I had fought so hard to protect was thriving, not just financially, but in its mission and values. My son was finding his own path, hopefully wiser for having faltered so dramatically. My grandchildren were growing up witnessing that integrity matters and that mistakes, even terrible ones, need not define a person forever if genuine change follows. Some might say I had lost a year of peace to conflict and legal battles, but I had gained something far more valuable. The knowledge that standing up for what's right, even when it breaks your heart, is always worth the cost. That family love can survive even the deepest betrayals if there's willingness to change and grow on all sides. And that at 69 years old, I was still capable of fighting for my life's work and winning not just the battle, but ultimately a deeper peace. The legacy of Sweet Comfort Bakery would continue, stronger for having weathered this storm. And the legacy I passed to my son and grandchildren would include not just recipes for perfect bread, but lessons in courage, forgiveness, and the rewards of building something of true value. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you love when they were wrong? It takes enormous courage to protect what you've built without completely shutting the door on reconciliation. I hope this story inspires you to honor your own worthwhile, still keeping your heart open to genuine change in others. If you found value in this journey, please consider leaving a comment about a time you had to stand firm for what was right. And if you'd like to hear more stories of triumph over betrayal, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need encouragement during difficult family challenges. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey, and I wish you strength and wisdom in protecting your own precious legacies.